So this weekend, been working on a MaxxECU for a Gen 2 Busa. Trying to come up with like a generic package that I could sort of build up and even have potentially in stock that would be kind of flexible for what anyone needs to do. They could do additional wiring for additional sensors through unused factory connectors, or I could make those harnesses as well. So this is similar to what I've done before, but I started these from scratch instead of flying lead harnesses. And anyway, I'm just going to show, with the exception of these two little harnesses here, all of the other inputs and outputs are all handled through the factory ECU harness on different connectors. What I have here for this customer anyway, I'm using 4 of the unused coil outputs, which are a 5 volt. So those could be used to run like a nitrosolenoid or one of the IGBT drivers from MaxxECU, or I'm going to use these to run a tricolor LED to show what boost table you're in out of 3 to pick from. These are the 12 volt outputs. There's 6 of them total. I have 5 of them wired to this connector. The 6th one I have wired to the SDS connector right next to a ground that's available. And then, so I guess I'll show some of the other stuff here. I've removed 4 of the EGT wirings. So basically I've got 4 of them set up here. So cylinders 1 through 4. This guy is CAN. So you would run this all the way up to the dash if you plan to run an aftermarket dash, like an AEM CD5 or CD7 or Power Dash or one of the Boost by Smith Race Technology Dash 2s with a CAN adapter. And then there's the wideband LSU 4.2 sensor. And then I've also got a Holley coil driver. So some of the ones I've done in the past, I set up the coil driver in the tail section. I'm trying to clean it up a little bit, you know, to keep a bunch of stuff from being in the tail. So this guy is set up to plug into the factory harness with the male connectors and then plug directly into the coils. This would mount, you know, forward to the valve cover. And then there's also a cylinder head ground to pick up. So I've got all the normal stuff wired in. So your throttle position, coolant, intake air temperature, you know, those things are going in through the factory sensors, as well as gear position. And then for the additional analog inputs, I'm using, there's a 4-pin STVA connector, which is right there, close to your injectors, and then there's a secondary throttle position sensor right there. So what I've done is I've repurposed a couple of the wires going to this servo connector here to have 5 volt sensor ground, and then give you the ability to bring in 2 analog inputs. Same thing here, you got 5 volt sensor ground and a single analog input. Also over the map sensor, repurposed that to be able to take an analog input in. Same thing on the barometric pressure sensor, which is near the ECU, near the Yosh and SDS connector. And then also on the Yosh connector, it has 5 volt and sensor ground as well. So there's 2 additional analog inputs that I'm bringing in there. So I'd provide mating connectors. So all 8 of the analog inputs plus throttle position, intake air temp, and coolant temperature, all of that stuff is going into the factory harness now. For some of the ground outputs on a race, there's 8 of them. TAC, fan, and fuel pump are kind of required, so those are already, you know, plumbed in where they need to be. Output 7 can serve as a digital input as well, so I'm setting that up as a 3rd or a 5th digital input. And the other grounds, I've got 2 of them going to the O2 sensor connector. There's 12 volt available there, so this works really good for boost control. So you get 12 volt and then 2 switch grounds for boost control, add and subtract. I've got a ground output going to the pair connector up near the ignition coils for a shift light or whatever else you might want it to do. I've also got the SDS connector, so the 6-pin connector near the ECU, the red with white wire. taking or turning that into a ground output that you can switch, and then there's a 12 volt available right there, so I give you a mating connector for that. Fuel pump, fan, and I think that covers it. And then digital inputs, I've got the clutch wired in so that you can do two-step and timers and stuff like that based on that. And then 2 empty ECU pins, pins 3 and 5 on the black connector here have empty spots, and I build a little harness to be able to bring the speed signal in so that you can do speed-based things with the Max. The stock speedo sensor does not go to the ECU normally. And then also bringing in, you know, the switched ground signal from the horn to do shift cut. If you happen to have one of my ECU editor ECU shifter harnesses, we can actually still use that. There's a way to set up a table in the software to be able to look at the gear position sensor voltage and actually use it as a kill mechanism. And then last but not least, there's 2 more digital inputs. So there's 5 total on a Max Race. I've got the mode up and the mode down button. So those work really nice for like selecting boost tables, or, you know, holding this guy for like rolling anti-lag for roll racers and stuff like that. And then in the event that you don't want to use those, there's a 2-pin connector that will get you into those inputs. So I could supply a mating connector to that if you wanted to wire something else in. So this is my attempt to try to take a real complicated wiring job, something like that, and be able to just, you know, remove the ECU off the bike, plug him in, mount this in the tail section, and, you know, within a few minutes you could be up and running, and then have the ability to add in, you know, additional sensors. Again, I can build harnesses to bring in your fuel pressure, oil pressure, wastegate pressure, wire your boost control solenoids, stuff like that. So I guess that's it. Thanks for watching. Sorry for all the rambling.